The Enigma of Tyler Robinson, Inside the Killing of Charlie Kirk. On a warm September evening in Orem, Utah, the auditorium at Utah Valley University buzzed with anticipation. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, was in the middle of his trademark Prove Me Wrong event. Students filled the room, some eager to spar, others simply curious. But outside, on a rooftop across the quad, a very different kind of anticipation was building. By the end of the night, Kirk would be mortally wounded by a sniper's bullet, and the nation would be asking one question: who is Tyler James Robinson? The making of a suspect. Tyler Robinson doesn't fit neatly into the stereotype of a political assassin. At 22 years old, he was a small-town kid from St. George, Utah, a conservative city framed by red desert cliffs, known more for its church steeples than political radicalism. He wasn't an outcast in the traditional sense. Robinson had attended Utah State University, though only briefly, before switching into an electrical apprenticeship at Dixie Technical College. By all accounts, he was a decent student with a supportive family. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Friends and relatives described a young man who seemed increasingly angry, politically restless, and glued to obscure corners of the internet where memes mixed with ideology and dark humor often crossed the line into something more corrosive. His family, devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and longtime Republicans, were bewildered. Somewhere along the line, their son had diverged sharply from the path they had imagined for him. A crime in broad daylight. The events of September 10, 2025 were chillingly deliberate. Investigators say Robinson positioned himself on the rooftop of UVU's Losey Center with a Mauser Model 98 rifle, an old-world German bolt-action gun chambered in .30-06. The weapon had a scope, carefully wrapped in a towel, as though prepared for a ritual as much as a crime. At 7:43 p.m., a single shot rang out. Chaos exploded inside the auditorium as Kirk collapsed. Students screamed, security scrambled, and by the time police swept the building, the shooter was gone. What remained, however, told its own story. Beside the rifle lay spent casings engraved with taunting messages: Bella Ciao, a nod to the Italian anti-fascist anthem, and Hey Fascist, catch. To detectives, it looked less like random vandalism and more like a manifesto in brass. The family betrayal. For nearly 33 hours, Robinson was a shadow on the run. Surveillance cameras caught images of him in different clothes before and after the attack, suggesting careful planning. But in the end, it wasn't advanced police work that brought him down. It was family. When Utah authorities released security footage of a suspect carrying a long package and moving across campus, Robinson's relatives recognized him almost instantly. One family member confronted him directly, and, according to reports, Robinson didn't deny it. His words were vague, but the implication was enough. That relative called police. On September 12, law enforcement arrested Robinson without incident. The symbolism was striking. A crime that shook the national stage unraveled in the most intimate way through the conscience of kin. Motives in the shadows. If this were a Hollywood script, the motive would be clear. But reality rarely obliges. Governor Spencer Cox of Utah has suggested Robinson embraced a leftist ideology, a stark departure from his family's conservative roots. Investigators also point to his transgender roommate, who reportedly harbored resentment toward conservatives and Christians. But so far, there's no evidence the roommate had any involvement in the shooting. Digital footprints complicate the picture. On Discord, Robinson allegedly exchanged messages about retrieving the rifle, wrapping it, and planning his vantage point. Combined with the cryptic engravings on the shell casings, these details suggest a man who wasn't acting out of sudden rage but cultivating a dark mission. Yet those who knew him describe a young man consumed less by ideology than by alienation, a person who found in fringe online communities both identity and justification. Was this political assassination, personal vendetta, or simply the logical conclusion of a radicalized youth with access to a rifle? For now, the answer remains elusive. Inside the jailhouse. Today, Robinson sits in the Utah County Jail, held without bail. Authorities have placed him under special watch, an indication that they're concerned about his mental stability and safety behind bars. He's isolated from the general prison population, awaiting mental health evaluations that may shed light on his state of mind. Prosecutors are preparing charges of aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, and felony discharge of a firearm. His first court appearance is expected within days. If convicted, he could face life in prison without parole or worse. A nation reacts. The killing of Charlie Kirk has ignited a firestorm. To conservatives, it's a chilling confirmation of their warnings about escalating left-wing violence. To progressives, it's a tragic but dangerous moment that could fuel further polarization and crackdowns on political dissent. Beyond the talking points, however, lies a deeper unease. Kirk's murder underscores how fragile civil discourse has become. A college debate intended to spark dialogue ended with a fatal gunshot. The questions echo louder than the answers. How do we keep public events safe in an era of extremism? How do we counteract the radicalization of isolated young men online? And at what point does meme culture stop being ironic and start being lethal? The enigma endures. As the investigation continues, Tyler Robinson remains more cipher than man, a quiet Utah apprentice turned alleged assassin. Was he a cold-blooded ideologue, scripting his act with engraved casings and online chats? Or a disaffected youth who stumbled too far down the rabbit holes of the internet? For now, the only certainty is this: a bullet from his rifle ended the life of one of the most polarizing conservative figures in America. And in doing so, it thrust Robinson himself into infamy. The story of Tyler Robinson is not just the story of a suspect. It is the story of America in 2025, divided, radicalized, and wrestling with the terrifying reality that political violence is no longer a distant possibility, it's here. Here.